Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I am delighted to welcome a marketing guru from Mexico. He's earlier from Canada and the US, Mike Moll. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Mike is the founder of Market Me Consulting. So, Mike, let's start with talking about Market Me Consulting. Tell me a little bit about this venture.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny story. I really fell into marketing. I didn't go to school for marketing. I went to college for 1 year, but my brain just didn't necessarily work with that method of learning. I took a job in insurance and selling flooring and doing all kinds of other things, just trying to figure out where I should be in the world. And I had a moment when I was with the insurance company where I almost, it was basically a panic attack where I knew I was in the wrong place. I was very unhappy. I arrived at the office. I reached for my car door and I just started trembling and crying uncontrollably. And I didn't know, I thought it was maybe like a heart attack. I really didn't know what it was at the time. And it was just my body saying, we've had enough and you're not doing what you should be doing. And so originally I left that company, started an app 2 weeks later, which was a tremendous disaster, but a great learning experience. I learned, everything about hiring and how taxes worked and how business structures should be. And from there, we were, it was very expensive to run this software business because developers and et cetera.
Yeah.
So I learned how to do Google ads because we were selling advertising for this firm just to make money to fund our company at the time. And I took to it and it caught in my brain. There was just, the puzzle unfolded very, very quickly for me, which I had never done before for anything else. And I realized then that's where I needed to be. And so for the past just over 9 years, I've been building that repertoire. We've kind of gone through, we started kind of in the e-commerce space. And when that got very crowded, we moved to more of a lead generation and consulting space. So we, 50% of our time is running campaigns for businesses. And then 50% of our time is consulting for larger companies who maybe have a team or an agency in place, but just want some extra support to understand what's going on a little bit better.
Fascinating. So let me start by asking you, what goes into building a successful brand?
That's a great question. I think it's just being true to who you are and what you're good at. And I think it's bigger. I think everyone wants that, like, kind of tied up in a bow, being authentic to who you are. That's part of it. But I think being authentic to what you're good at is the bigger challenge for most entrepreneurs. The reason I say that is because I remember at the beginning for me, if it was graphic design or email marketing or websites, I'm like, I got to have it all. I got, if I can get a yes and I can get money, let's bring it in the door. And it took a couple of years of just kind of drowning in trying to make everybody happy. And when I realized, if we were just running ads on Google and Facebook for these particular types of businesses, we would have so much less overhead, so much less stress, so much less things that we're not even, I'm not that great at. So trying to find all these people to do this stuff. And so when we actually narrowed our focus and we were just true to what we were good at, our trajectory was, exponentially quicker than anything we've ever done before.
Very interesting. So, I've spent a whole lifetime in brands and marketing and building organizations. I've often said that brands are living beings, they're like children. You got to keep on investing repeatedly in a brand for a brand to keep on growing and thriving. My question to you, Mike, is what, in your opinion, needs to be done to enable a brand to stay relevant for a long time?
That is a great question. Yeah. So for brand relevance, I think there's kind of two tiers, right? There's the, I'm going to have the, million to $2 million a year organization versus I'm going to have a multinational, and for me, I don't know anything about massive companies and needing to continually invest in the, Super Bowl ads and all this. I don't know. that's
Mm.
kind of out of my wheelhouse. But what I will say for a smaller brand, for someone who, has more of a lifestyle business,
Mm.
a couple team members across the world, get to travel all the time. For me, that's kind of my sweet spot. That's what I focus on.
Mm.
So for me, it's having a customer success blueprint,
Mm.
because the fuel of your business is not buying ads to get new people. That does work, but letting your existing clients become an advocate for you, that to me is how smaller brands build brand. It's
Mm.
that word of mouth. It's that insatiable, oh, you have to work with Mike. He's that guy that does
Mm.
that thing. When
Mm.
you can build that, you'll never need for customers again. But in order to do that, you need to have a customer success blueprint. So what
Mm.
I do is, every step of the journey of the customer, from discovering us to reaching out to us to signing up to our monthly, what we do monthly,
Mm.
I have a document that outlines what my ideal scenario is for that person and why I need that ideal scenario to happen. So
Mm.
super short example is, when somebody becomes a lead, so they fill out a form on the website, my requirements are they get an automated email
Mhm.
right away from a human that says, well, not so, with somebody's name on it that says, hey, thank you for your inquiry. Someone's going to get back to you within 24 hours, because
Mhm.
you enter into a form and you never know what's coming back or if anyone's ever going to actually read it. And so
Mhm.
getting that, hey, we'll talk to you again in 24 hours. And then my expectation is within 4 hours,
Mm.
call the person within 4 hours, bring energy, have looked at their website already, so we have a level of preparedness that when we go talk to somebody, they feel like we're investing in them at all
Mm.
times. And
Mm.
we do that not only before they purchase, but post purchase. What can we do every month that makes them feel like they're really taken care of? And so what we do is we send a Loom video, which is a quick recording of our, there's a picture in the corner and then their
Mhm.
screen is in the main part.
Mm.
And what we do is we say, hey, here's some stuff that we're seeing in your account. This is what we're working on. This is going really well. Here's
Mm.
something we're experimenting with. Just wanted to keep you in the loop. And
Mm.
it's a 40-second video every 2 weeks, but it just makes them feel integrated into your process. And to
Wow.
me,
Mm.
those little things, customer success tactics, those are the things that build brand if you're a small company.
Mm. Quite amazing. Quite amazing. So, every time I speak to someone who has an amazing understanding of brand, I just go back in my own journey, which was started in 1979. So it's 40 to 43 years. Uh, when I was in branding, marketing, the only communication we had was big billboards, and then television started to come in and full page newspaper ads. The entire paradigm has now changed. And you said 9 years ago, you were building an app. I'd like to get your perspective on how is the digital world changing brands?
It's changing it in every way, shape, and form.
Mm-hmm.
I think everything from the ability to advertise in ways that you could never even fathom doing before.
Mm-hmm.
Like, the way that you can target somebody on Facebook. I mean, not like it was 8 years ago. They've lost a lot of their power, but every purchase now, every first touch point with a brand, every initial conversation, every first impression almost is happening on the internet now. And so, what I encourage people to do, you obviously need to you can run campaigns. You can do that, run ads on Google, run ads on Instagram for cheaper than you could ever advertise anywhere. And it's more measurable and more effective. So, I mean, that is amazing. And I think the brands that are not taking advantage of that, or at least dipping their toe in the water, I think they're missing out in a really significant way. And I don't say that just because I'm in that space. For me, it's, you send out something in a newspaper or on the radio, your ability to measure and quantify and decide what radio stations to put more money into, none of that exists. So at that point, this is the paradigm shift from a marketing perspective. Is marketing used to be an expense. If you can measure it, it now becomes more of an investment. And if you can shift your mentality into making it an investment, you're going to be much happier dumping money into that machine. So, I mean, I think that's one. And then I think, social presence, continuity of your online brand, I think you absolutely need that, because when I think about how I go to buy something, I don't look it up in the yellow pages anymore. I go to Google. If I don't know anybody that knows someone that has that type of business, I Google it first. I go to the website. I probably click to their Facebook page to see if it looks, because are they, is it an active business? What was the last time they posted? 2017. So I don't think you need to be amazing at everything, but I do think you need to have continuity of your brand across all the relevant areas. So web, basic social, local directories. I think that's imperative, and making sure that information is up to date. And you're, even if you're just posting once a month on social media, just to let people know, because they're going to check your Instagram page to see. And if you posted 2 years ago, then you should just terminate the Instagram page. Don't have it.
And yet, Mike, there is this constant debate. There are some of these big social media platforms, from your Facebook to Instagram to Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn. And then there are, of course, the smaller ones. How does a brand decide which platform should I be on?
I think that decision should come down to your bandwidth and capabilities to create.
Okay.
Because, and I've had clients who are like, yeah, I'm going to have a YouTube channel. I'm like, are you going to create a video a day for the next 2 years? No. There's no way. You don't have that much to talk about. So I think, I think people think that they need to be everywhere. Well, I need to have one of everything. I don't think you do, because I think if you're going to do a crappy job on some of them, that you should just not have them at all.
Agreed.
And if you are, if you have a very, if you have a business that, is beautiful, a flower business, a photography business, a event planning business, and you have access to beautiful content all the time, great. Instagram is probably going to be great for you. If you don't, if you're an accounting firm, maybe it's just LinkedIn and Facebook, because how much content do you have to go out of the way to create, to post that much on Instagram and have it not be ugly pictures? So I think it's, you got to be true to, your time, your energy. And I think a lot of people get stuck feeling like, if I'm not on every platform, I'm falling behind.
Right.
And I just don't think that's true. Most sales that you're going to get are going to come through word of mouth, are going to come through, if someone found you on a directory or Google, or it's going to be through a paid ad. The amount of people that discover the average brand and make that purchase through Instagram is not significant. And if you're not good at it, it's not going to work anyway. So my advice would be, don't beat yourself up, and just use the platforms that feel easy, that, allow you to have a little bit of a presence.
Well said. Well said. So my next question to you is, again, I'm enjoying relating back to my own experience so many decades ago, and now you talking in the here and now. Advertising or communication for brands was based on either a film star or a sports star. Today, there is this incredible new breed of influencers. How are they impacting brands, and how does a brand manager manage such a diverse group of influencers?
Yeah, it's tricky. It's still a little bit of the Wild West on the influencer marketing front. We have a probiotics brand that we were working with, and we're looking for 15, to have an active roster of 15 influencers at a time. So I think the power, especially if you don't have a crazy budget. So this is how I think about it. If you're a brand that's big enough to buy a TV commercial, go after the macro influencers. Go after the person that you can pay $50,000 a post for, because at this point, it's the top layer on top of everything else that you're doing. But if you aren't running, tens of thousands of ads on the, Google and Facebook and all of those core things that bring the core business, you should not be engaging in macro influencers, because they are they're a branding and awareness and a credibility piece. Those are not necessarily people that are going to generate massive sales if your fundamentals of marketing are not there in the first place. So this micro influencer thing, these people with 10 or 20,000 followers, 80,000 followers, that is a real sweet spot, because you can find people that, match and really align with what your product is about at a lower cost. But the challenge with them is that some of them think that they've got, macro influencer impact. And so, the pricing, I paid influencers $50 a post. And then somebody with less followers than them said, oh yeah, my average, it's 2,500 per post. Like, wait, how do you get from $50 to 20? And there's no real, there's not really a a number that's really established in the marketing industry yet. There's no table, there's no chart. With digital marketing, you say, okay, if you're spending a certain amount of ads, usually you charge a certain percentage fee to manage those ads. And that's kind of the accepted amount of money that you charge. But influencers, pardon me, influencers, it's very challenging right now. So if you're thinking about doing this, I would talk to a lot of them. When we did our original outreach, we reached out to about 150 to sign 10, because we needed to have those conversations.
Correct.
Make sure that they're not working with a competitive brand already. And what we found, though, is even if their audiences are a little bit smaller, what tends to happen is they built their audience from the content that they made. They built it from the ground up, and they follow them for their Instagram. Versus the macro people are probably a sports person or a movie star, and they got famous from something else. So the audience that's following them is more sporadic. It's not nearly as refined, if you will. So I've actually had really good success with micro.
Amazing. The other part of a brand is the communication that goes into being able to tell potential customers what you're all about. The communication landscape, Mike, is also changing very significantly. From films which were 35, 45 seconds, 1 minute long, it started getting reduced, shorter and shorter. Now you're looking at 10 seconds or 7 seconds or 5 seconds. How does one communicate a message in such a short period of time, and how does it get understood?
The truth is that most people don't. Most people do not have the talent and the creativity to make those videos and make them impactful. So I think while everybody's chasing the trend, I kind of go back to what is it that you're capable of, and just follow that. Because there are also people that are still publishing 17-minute videos on YouTube. And it's working for them. Not everybody is shifting. And so what I would say is, I would say 95% of people don't have the talent to tell a story in 7 seconds. And the amount of different iterations, different things that you have to, storyboard and draft up to be able to create those. I've gone through the process. It's exhausting. It's really, really difficult. And I'm in that creative content making space. I find it tremendously difficult. So I think it's a very select few that can actually achieve it. And so that's kind of my only thought on that, because it's really, really hard, and I don't have an answer. I'm not very good at it.
But do you see a trend moving towards the elevator pitch, which is from earlier used to be a minute or so, or 30 seconds, is now down to 7 seconds? Do you see that trend developing faster?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think even the majority of what we put out is in that 15-second range. And so, what I would say, our kind of tactic is the traditional storytelling method, where it's, all verbal. That's really, really, really tough. So now what you need to do to take a minute to 15 seconds is you have to have some verbal, you have to have some words on the screen, and those images that you're using or the video pieces that you're using have to help tell the story. So you actually need all three things working in harmony to get the point across. So if the vocal is going to be very fast, but the images are corresponding to what the vocal is, that will help reinforce it in the person's brain. Because you'll notice at 15 seconds, it's like we're talking 3-second bursts, 5 ideas, 3 seconds each. So you're talking very quickly. So if you have the words on the screen and the images or the videos on the screen that correspond to what you're saying, that actually helps the person take that message in 15 seconds versus just trying to whip through a video asset. It doesn't work that way. So it's funny, as you shorten and you speed up, you actually have to slow a lot of things down in order to make it work.
Interesting. My next question, I think I have time for 2 more questions. My next question, Mike, is that, the whole world has gone through this pandemic, and most of us have figured out or learned to work from home. What has working from home done to the challenge of brand managers in terms of communication?
Yeah, I took a lot of calls from friends of
Mm.
mine who had companies. My business has been remote since 2013.
Yeah.
So, we've been on Slack, we've been on Zoom the whole time, and watching everybody try and kind of catch up was kind of kind of funny actually.
Right.
Um, what I would say is the way that we've made it work,
Hmm.
because not having that person to turn to say, hey Sally, hey Tim, like what's your thought on this, to
Hmm.
not have that ability and to make it now not only more challenging but more disruptive, right? To send a notification onto someone's Slack is actually more distracting than just turning to the side and being able to talk to them. So I do empathize. I think it's gotten harder for a lot of medium to big organizations or companies that bring in a lot of junior people, because
Hmm.
those junior people need to just hear those conversations laterally beside them, and that helps them learn. So there's some stuff that has gotten a lot worse,
Hmm.
and there's a lot of things that have gotten a lot more challenging with it for sure.
Hmm.
Some of the ways that we've combated it are we put a 15-minute cap on our meetings.
Hmm.
So whether it is a client meeting or whether it's an internal meeting, the maximum time you can book a meeting for is 15 minutes.
Okay.
And when you're submitting for that meeting, you have to say, what client are we talking about? What's the subject matter? What is the goal? The biggest thing is, what are we trying to achieve in this meeting?
Hmm.
That way, when we're there, everybody's mind is on it, because we're all zoomed out. We're all, I got to get on another video call. I got to get on another Slack notification. So when you're you have to do them anyway, right? So when you're doing them, make them as concise as possible. We have a ton of meetings that are 5 minutes long,
Amazing.
because what we do is we come in with one objective. What are we trying to achieve on this 5 minutes? Oh, I need an answer to this. Great. Submit all the documents, submit everything ahead of time, so that when we're all coming, we're all looking at the same thing. We're not scrambling around. Oh, let me just look up where this document is. Let me forward it to you. No. It all goes in the meeting invite, so that when we get into that meeting, we feel accomplished. We feel like it was a successful call. And that kind of helps helps combat some of the fatigue, I find.
Amazing. And my last question to you, and this is about the millennials and the Gen Zs as consumers. So that's millennials and Gen Zs on the one side as consumers, and then there is this huge number of people, which include people like me, who are the 60 plus, where people are saying in the US by 2030, 80% of wealth will be in the hands of people who are 60 plus. How are you, as a brand consultant or advisor, managing these two diverse segments, and making sure that people are getting what they're looking from?
Yeah. I think the first thing is just recognizing the way that people communicate in those buckets, and then the way that they grew up as it relates to technology. So what I tend to do is my conversations with people kind of that are even in my field, even like 40 plus, because I'm 36, and half of my friends that are 36 are completely like, I hate technology, I don't understand it. And I'm all in. Like, I've always been addicted to it. But even at my bracket, so at 40, those are the people that didn't have cell phones until they were like midway through college. Whereas I had a cell phone as soon as I started high school. So I was like right on the cusp of that. So I actually bucket it just slightly older than me. And I just recognize that this stuff is foreign. This is a group of people that, when they're using a word processor like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, they're afraid that if they push one button, that the whole document will go away somehow. Like that's their fear. They have a fear of technology still. So the way I approach that is like from a very consultative, very like education first approach in my conversations. And then kind of the younger people where they grew up with it in their hand. They had the iPad as an 8-year-old, they had all those things. We kind of accelerate through the education, and we actually talk about more about the why, more about the strategic side of why we're having the conversation, because they don't have the life experience necessarily, as the 40 plus. So yeah, we have different conversations in a different way for the different groups. I think the biggest takeaway is it's never one size fits all. Every single person you talk to the more you can dive in. And that's why, on a discovery call, or when I'm learning something about somebody's business, like I want to know what their experience with all this stuff is. What kind of campaigns have you run in the past? Have you ever done digital? Have you used an agency? Did you do it in-house? Are you coming at me from only ever doing print and radio? Like, where are you at? And what is your knowledge level? And then I kind of take that information and then I have a unique conversation. I think most businesses are trying to have a one size fits all conversation. And I get it. Like, the massive corporations, they don't have the amount of people required to have those conversations. But I am seeing a trend now, even with those larger companies, that they're trying to put more, customer service people on the front line, because they're realizing, hey, if we can actually create this bond or this relationship with the individual, they become an advocate, because they're saying, well, we're not like the other big companies. And so I've noticed even with telecom companies in Canada, like Rogers, which is one of the bigger, one of the biggest ones, they now say, hey, do you want to talk to a real person? Press 3. And then right before you go on, hey, we're proud to let you know that every single person that answers the phone is from Canada. Like they're trying to build that, because having this cold, stale version of speaking to people just makes nobody like you. So I think it's just recognizing that everyone that talks to you, whether it's coming in as a complaint or coming in as a new lead, try and really understand. Just ask the question.
Well said.
Ask the questions.
Well said. Mike, on that note, and your incredible advice for a 5-minute meeting, which I've got to experiment with. Thank you so much for speaking to me. Thank you for talking to me at such length on your knowledge of marketing, branding, social media, different platforms, what goes into building a brand. Thank you also for talking to me about communication and how that is beginning to evolve and change so significantly. Thank you again for talking to me, and good luck.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the Brand Called You.